Walter White is officially a trailblazing meth dealer, coming up with new cooking method to make just amazing meth without some of the usual supply chain issues. And my favorite part is that it's blue, which is my favorite color. I even wore a blue shirt for those of you on YouTube just for that. Hi, and welcome to Belated Binge, the podcast that doesn't take itself or the show too seriously. I'm Zach, your host, here to let you relive your favorite shows like Breaking Bad, which ended over 10 years ago, and I'm finally watching for the first time. However, if you're familiar with the podcast, you'll know that I started this quite a while ago. I did the first 4 episodes like a year ago, and then I stopped. But here's the thing I recently realized I actually finished season 1. I just hadn't recorded all of my reactions. So, what better way to get into Breaking Bad than to share with you what my initial reactions were? So, grab your gas masks and chemistry sets as I react to my reaction of the final finale episode for season 1, a no rough stuff type of deal.
The Belated Binge Podcast.
Before we get started, there will be no spoilers because I have no idea what happens in this show aside from this dude becoming a meth dealer. There will be language, earmuff the children. Shout out to the bonus binge squad on Patreon, patreon.com/belatedbinge. We left off in the last episode with Walt pushing Jesse to try to make a deal with a big player who beat him into the hospital. Walt shaved his head, blew up the drug guy's place. Oh, and they agreed to a bigger deal, like twice the quantity of meth than they had originally planned on doing. All right. So, a reminder, the way that I was doing this back then was to pull out my notes while watching the episode and just frantically type what was happening in the scene and what my immediate reactions were. So, I'm going to be going through whatever the heck I was saying and thinking back then and probably making fun of myself along the way. Let's jump into a no rough stuff type of deal. Which opens apparently on a random dude talking about catching the person who is stealing supplies from the school and making meth. And this appears to be a school board, like a parent meeting type of a thing, like an open hall. And they're harping on Hugo's arrest because he's the scapegoat for these people. And while all these parents who just want to tell the cops how to do their jobs, Walt either really wants to leave or is getting off on getting away with this completely because he goes for an old like hand up the skirt move on Naggy wife under the table. She does protest for like a quick second and then she's like, "Oh no, I'm in." Unfortunately for Naggy wife, she's snapped out of her foreplay by the over hyper school administrative lady calling Walt's name and starting an ovation for him so he can now tell everyone what was stolen from the school. Naggy wife is very much not interested in the list of missing beakers. She wants to get it on, which apparently happens in the parking lot right next to the cop car. Oh, Walt from the back seat. Naggy wife asks why that sex was so good, and he says because it was illegal. He was getting off on being the person getting away with this shit. And now, so is Naggy wife. And that's when the credits started. So that's fun. Back in action at some kind of dark place. It's the basement of Little Buddy's house. The realtor says that, think of all the things that you can do down here as she's showing people around. And all I can think of or could think of is, like kill someone. And they're walking on squishy floors asking about the patched up ceiling. And the realtor, again, with a great line, "The house has great bones." Yeah, melted bones squishing underneath your feet. And here's Walt coming to visit little buddy. He's laid up in the RV, still has broken ribs. Walt is just now telling him about the Tuco meeting. He hands him an envelope full of cash, and good on Walt. The extra $15,000 he took off Tuco didn't get split. He gave it all to Jesse, which is a big deal when you think about this guy's dying of cancer and he's turned into a meth cook and dealer to pay for the medical bills and set his family up so that they don't have to worry about it. but he's giving 15 grand to Jesse for his. Walt is definitely underselling the meeting, 2 pounds a week, and little buddy is not happy about it. But it's again because Walt doesn't know shit about being a drug dealer. There's a supply issue on the ingredient side. He calls it pseudo, which I think is pseudomethamphetamine, but I don't really know anything about cooking meth. That's just a word that I've heard. Um, what I do know is that Jesse is working hard behind the scenes, driving like 400 miles round trip to get the stuff that they need to actually make said meth. Now Walt is with Naggy wife at a doctor meeting, and the doctor is being very nice to her. And my first thought is if he's nailing Naggy wife, but I don't actually think that's happening. She's spilling all the tea about how Walt is more frisky than he's been. And now she's suggesting to the doctor some alternative treatments. That's what we need. Naggy wife telling the cancer doctor how to treat cancer. Great. Just fantastic. Walt, dude, maybe you just need to keep her in a state of sexual euphoria so that she will stop doing everything else that she does. Naggy wife's the worst. Now we are in a junkyard for a meetup with Tuco, and little buddy is giving Walt shit about the location that they went to. This is clearly the theme that we're heading toward in this partnership. We've got little buddy who's going to teach Walt the intricacies of being a criminal drug dealer, and Walt is going to teach little buddy about the chemistry to make better meth. When you think about it, they're kind of the perfect match. You know, if you want them both to die. And here comes the black SUV, because every bad guy in every movie and every drug dealer in every show and everything happens from a black SUV. Little buddy is nervous as hell, and he's not even close to hiding it, which makes sense because, you know, last time he dealt with these people, he ended up in the hospital. Walt has now busted out a black bowler hat for his Heisenberg character. And I am having a really, really hard time with this act. Tuco has no problem putting Jesse in the hospital, but Walt's false confidence has him agreeing to everything immediately. It makes no sense. And this guy does a big show of throwing money around and being all aggressive after Walt pushes it to 4 pounds. And it just doesn't, things don't, I'm having a hard time with that in this show. Back at little buddy's house, Walt has worked up a way to make the meth without the pseudo, which I'm pretty sure was one of my crazy predictions, which means I get to celebrate a win. This is my celebration face. And now we cut to a home movie being shot, and it just occurred to me that most of you are listening to this, not watching it. So I will describe to you right now my celebration face. It's just my face, but happier. And yeah, anyways, now Walt gives Jesse a shopping list. I literally lost my own train of thought. Being silly. He can't even pronounce the shit that's on this list. He's ready to quit. And Walt gives him a rah speech. We can do this. We're meth dealers now. And now we cut to a home movie apparently being shot live at the baby shower, focusing on the aunt who's wildly happy. It's a slap happy moment until Walt gets on camera, and it's wholesome and it's touching. And then there's gifts and Walter Jr. is sticking the camera on some chick's boobs. Sure, why not? We get a heart-to-heart with the brother-in-law. First, stronger alcohol, which is absolutely necessary because that's what it's like talking to the brother-in-law. You need alcohol. He busts out a couple of Cubans, which Walt flips on Mr. DEA that it's illegal, and then goes into a legal versus illegal thing. And apparently, meth used to be legal, which I didn't know. But thank God it's not legal now, because we wouldn't have a show. It would just be perfectly fine for this chemistry teacher to be making meth in his classroom. That wouldn't be any fun. Anyways, Walt is doing research on the alternative medicine that Naggy wife is wanting him to look at and whatever, and is talking about returning the fancy tiara her sister bought for the money. And now it actually starts to make sense. Walt told her that he's doing a sweat lodge for the weekend. And what he's really doing is cooking 4 pounds of meth because Jesse came through on his shopping list with no explanation at all as to how. Just, it was hard. That's a pretty good way to explain plot things, don't you think? It was tough. Except one thing from the list. And apparently that's going to cost 10 grand for a couple of like thieves to go get it for him. And Walt decides, I don't have 10 grand. We're just going to steal it ourselves. And a bunch of what looks like those magnetic toys for kids, the ones that you throw and erase, that's the key to opening this lock. Because chemistry, which I feel like is going to be a thing in this show a lot. We're just going to learn new things that chemistry can do to explain plot inconveniences. And we're then cutting back to Naggy wife trying to return the tiara, and the dude asks to see a receipt. And this has been telegraphed for a couple of scenes now. She's going to get arrested because the sister stole the tiara. Remember how she stole the shoes? I called it. It happened. And the dude is relishing the moment that he's catching her about this theft. And Naggy wife goes all Naggy wife and starts threatening to call reporters and playing the pregnancy card and fake hyperventilating and fake labor. And it worked. Of course it worked. Again, plot. Sure. We then cut back to Walt and Jesse, who are now bickering over Walt's ski mask fashion choices. And this is just a hodgepodge mission that's undoubtedly going to go incredibly wrong. We all know it. Jesse has a win. He has the idea to lock the security dude in the, well, he locked him in the shitter. And then they explode the lock on the door. And now they're shopping while the alarms are going off. And they can barely lift the drum of whatever this stuff is that they needed. I'm feeling like Jesse. I can't even pronounce half the shit on this show. He thought to himself as they waddled by the guard in the porta potty. And thought to himself about how he thought to himself a year ago when he was watching them waddle past the guard in the porta potty. It's the next day, and Walt can't start the RV. Their rolling meth lab isn't going anywhere. So now they're cooking in the basement. And little buddy is trying to call and make sure that the real estate lady doesn't come in today, and she's not answering because she's setting up for his open house right outside. We have no idea any of this is happening. It's obviously going to go really bad, which is fun. Here we go. People all over the house, and there's a child. Walt waves at her. It's a cute moment. And also, what the fuck is happening? Because now we're with the sister who's stealing more shit. Earrings, I guess. Except now she's probably not going to steal them because Skylar found her. It's a really weird exchange. But again, I guess because it had actually been a little while since we showed her stealing shoes, and we just had the reveal that she stole the tiara, we have to then have her stealing more shit just in case you didn't put two and two together yourself. Because plot. And then back at the house, some lady's sniffing around like she's a drug dog, which is weird. Some dude wants to go in the basement, and Jesse just clears everyone out. I guess he won't be using this realtor anymore. But alas, what are you going to do? And Walt is home. I assume that means he successfully cooked his 4 pounds of meth. There's orange juice waiting for him, which is great if you like orange juice. I wonder if Walt is a pulp or no pulp guy. I don't remember if that's said on the episode. It might even be in my notes that I'm about to go through. I'm not sure. But are you a pulp or no pulp type of person in your orange juice? Me, I'm a no pulp person. I don't like chunky things in my drinks. That's gross to me. I don't like chunky things in my ice cream. And now that I'm older, ice cream doesn't like me at all anyways, and I can't even eat ice cream. This just got sad. This podcast is supposed to be fun. And now I'm sad. Remember my happy face from earlier when I got the prediction right? This is my sad face. And for those of you listening, it's just my face, but sadder. And Naggy Wife is also waiting on him and sniffing his head. We've got human drug dogs everywhere. This is weird. She informs Walt that the tiara was stolen and makes it a whole big thing. And Walt uses this opportunity to cryptically suggest extreme measures that are okay for family. Asks her if she'd turn him in, if it was him that stole the tiara. And she wasn't convincing, like, at all. She's not into it. So it's probably not going to go great when it's not stealing a tiara and it's actually, you know, cooking and dealing meth when your brother-in-law is a DEA agent. She's going to love that. Anyways, so much for becoming partner in the drug empire. And that's a prediction I assume that I've gotten wrong. But we'll see. That would be less of a sad face. That would be a bit of a, yeah, duh. But it's a fun prediction nonetheless. At the drug deal, the meth is blue. And Tuco loves it. 4.6 pounds of blue meth. And here we go. Tuco goes off on his own guy for piping up at them, and Walter tries to come to the guy's defense. This is how it goes down. Tuco beats the piss out of this guy. He might actually be dead. I think he actually might be dead. And that's what I mean when I said that it doesn't make sense that he's given into Walt so easily at every turn. He just apparently killed or almost killed his own guy for speaking out of turn. He would have killed Walt several times over if he wasn't wearing plot armor. And this display of physical force has our boys shook, especially Walt, who didn't see Jesse get beat down before. Now he got to see this other guy. I don't know where to go from here. So that's the episode and the end of the first season. And I'm not going to harp more right now about the plot armor because I've said enough about it. And that was a fairly anticlimactic finale, I think. It's a good setup, I suppose. We've got the arrangement in place for big money moves that Walt is trying to make. He's made the new school like the new school meth version, I guess you could say. It's going to be a way to get around the supply chain issue, but also a way to kind of have a signature, I guess. So we're going to be on schedule and we're going to be differentiated, and we got our stuff that we need for drug kingpinism, I guess. We've also got a wild card distributor who's a loose cannon, and that should present plenty of opportunities for obstacles and whatnot. And at home, we've got a baby that is almost here. We've got drama between the sisters. That stealing plot with the sister is certainly going to keep being a thing. They set that one up early, and so I completely expect for it to continue. And it's not just going to be I've seen the error of my ways, I'm not going to steal anymore, my husband's in law enforcement, this was a bad idea. We've got the investigation at the school. Hank, the brother-in-law, is kind of looming there. He's kind of all around Walt and hasn't even thought of Walt yet, which again, I've mentioned on a past couple of episodes now. I have seen in the year since watching this first season that Walt that Hank does eventually catch Walt and confront him. And so that's going to be a thing. This is a good TV show. I'm still not sure it's the greatest TV show ever made or the greatest TV show I've ever seen, but it is good. It's a slow burn. It's surprisingly comedic. The episodes don't have a ton going on, but they've got enough to keep you locked in during the episode most of the time. That second episode where they spent like most of the time just talking in the living room, that one was tough. But for the most part, it keeps you engaged. So that's good. It was a short season too. I did look once without trying to read any titles or summaries, but I think that the next 4 seasons of the show are going to be more of the traditional length of like 12 episodes each season. I think. Um, so I don't know what this was. I don't know why this one was 7 episodes. This isn't a history of the show type of a podcast because I've never seen the show. So I'm not going to go looking up a bunch of information about it because then I would know what happens in the whole show. And that defeats the purpose of this whole reaction thing I'm doing. So, anyways, I don't know why necessarily it was like a 7 season or 7 episode first season, but it does seem like the rest of them are a bit more quote unquote normal length. It kind of reminds me of The Office in that way. If you've heard early on in this podcast, earlier, I guess, on in this podcast life, I had covered the first season of The Office. We may be bringing The Office back in some form or fashion. It's just not going to be the way that it was before exactly. Because you can only watch one episode at a time and say, huh, that was a good joke so much. But enough about The Office, just saying that I do have interest in bringing that back in some way, whether that's batching some episodes together or doing at least some like season reviews, something. I don't know. I'll figure out how to make it uh, an interesting thing to do if I decide to do it. If not, you don't care because you're here for Breaking Bad. Anyways, there's plenty of opportunities with this show for me to think, um, like I know what's coming, and also be completely wrong about what I thought was coming, which I think is a good. I think that's a good thing for a show like this to have, especially if it's not going to be crazy action packed all the time. This isn't Sons of Anarchy, which is a show that I cover on this podcast as well. And that one has stuff going on constantly. There's multiple subplots in every single episode. There's action happening at every turn, bikes, bullets, drama, explosions. It's that kind of show. And this one is in the same like anti-hero vein, but it's a way more mild and like subdued kind of flow to the show, I think. And so being able to set the audience up with thinking that they know what's coming and then flipping on them in a way that they didn't see coming is a really, really good way to keep that interest up when things aren't just blowing up every 5 seconds, which I think is a good segue for me to jump into some of my ridiculous predictions that I had when I was watching the show for the first time like a year ago, and now trying to remember what the heck I thought was going on. So the first one was I think Naggy Wife is going to stay on the sister for stealing and might even pull the DEA brother in on it. That seems like low hanging fruit. That is right up Naggy Wife's alley and definitely something that she would do. I also thought that Walter Jr. was going to be a bigger part of the plot in season 2. I don't have a lot of reason for that, but he wasn't really in the last couple episodes except to be a pervert with the camcorder. I think he's going to get a storyline that becomes like one of Walt's problems to overcome in season 2. Maybe it's an attention thing when the baby comes. Maybe it's just being a horny teenager, but something feels like it needs to happen with that character. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he's going to get a girl pregnant. That might not be in season 2, but that feels like the type of plot point where we're probably going to have to go in some kind of direction with that character at some point in time. So I'm guessing that happens in season 2. Before I go, saying some more predictions based on no evidence, I'm going to call it with that one. If you enjoyed my reaction to my reaction of the first season of Breaking Bad, go ahead and leave a review on whatever app you're using right now. 5 stars, please. If you want to join the discussion, There is a free Facebook group for listeners of the podcast. There's a link in the show notes of this episode that you are watching or listening to right now. If you're on YouTube, comment below all the things. Now that I have reached the point where I had finished like a year ago, we're not doing this whole like reaction to my reaction thing. We're going to go back to reacting to the show as I watch the episodes, but there's going to be a little bit of a different format. It's going to feel a little bit more like the other shows that I cover in some of the more recent episodes for things like Sons of Anarchy. There will be a show summary, but then I'm gonna talk about more stuff in kind of at a I guess a higher level and make my predictions and stuff like that, kind of just in a different way. It's not going to be a scene by scene recount of every single thing that happens in the show and exactly what I was thinking at the time. It's going to be more summary of what went down, and then we'll probably zero in on like a character at a time, a couple of plot points that are particularly interesting, and then like I said, I'll make my predictions that I'll probably get wrong, and that's probably how we're going to tackle this thing moving forward. So yeah, if you're down for that, then stick around. Remember, life is short. Still, don't become a meth dealer. But if you do, buy an RV, wear headphones, and take Belated Binge, Breaking Bad, wherever that RV happens to take you.